Hi you guys! Welcome to the next part in the Othello journey. So we just left off where everyone basically is traveling now to the island of Cyprus, okay? And we just ended the next video, the last video, with drawing Emilia, who is Iago's wife, and also Desdemona's lady-in-waiting, okay? So I was explaining Cassio was aboard. So Othello was on one ship, Cassio was aboard a second ship, and then Iago, Desdemona, and her lady-in-waiting Emilia, who was Iago's wife, sailed on a third boat at a safe distance behind. So there are 3 ships sailing, okay, or 3 boats. Scheming Iago had arranged for Rodrigo to sell all his belongings and travel with them. Thus ever do I make this fool my purse, he laughed to himself. Oh God, that's awful. He is taking advantage of Rodrigo and his feelings for Desdemona. Othello's warship set course to block the invading Turks. His soldiers were primed for a fight. In the end, it was the sea that won the battle for Venice. The most destructive storm that Cyprus had ever seen scattered the Turks' heavy ships like dead leaves. The badly damaged Turkish fleet turned sail and retreated. So the only reason they beat the Turks in the little battle they had was because there was such a horrible storm. And I don't think the Turks' ships were as prepared as Othello's ships were. So they retreated, which means they ran away, basically, or sailed away, whatever you want to say. When the lieutenant reached Cyprus, oh sorry, I skipped a line. In the squall, which is the battle, I think, Cassio lost sight of Othello's ship. When the lieutenant reached Cyprus, he was anxious for news of his friend and commander. So Cassio lost Othello's ship during the battle, so now that the battle's over, he's kind of worried that Othello is okay. Iago's ship docked next. Cassio was happy to see his friend Desdemona, though he could give the anxious bride no certain news of her husband. So they're not sure yet if Othello's ship made it. As Cassio spoke warmly to Desdemona, a sly smile spread across Iago's face. His first attempt at revenge had failed, but now a sweeter idea presented itself. Iago would convince Othello that Desdemona was having an affair with Cassio. He privately sneered at the handsome nobleman's courtly manners, a kiss here, a bow there. He takes her by the palm, Iago chuckled. Aye, smile upon her, do. With as little a web as this will I ensnare as great a fly as Cassio. So basically, Iago is witnessing Cassio talk to Desdemona, and he's only her friend. He doesn't see her as anything more. But Iago, since Cassio is such a gentleman and is treating her kindly and asking her if she's okay, right, and trying to make her feel better since Othello isn't back yet, Iago is using that to his advantage, and he's going to spread some rumors that are not true, that Cassio has a thing for Desdemona, right, which is a lie. A cry shook Iago out of his jealous daydream. A ship's mast appeared on the horizon. Everyone rushed to the water's edge. Othello's ship soon sailed safely into port. Desdemona ran forward to meet her husband. Othello kissed her forehead. If after every tempest comes such contentment, may the winds blow till they have wakened death, he murmured. So that's very kind. So he's saying, basically it's a metaphor. And he's saying, if every storm brings happiness like this, then I hope that there are always storms. So basically because she thought he was dead and she was so worried, she's being extra sweet and extra loving towards him, and he appreciates it. Since the Turkish invasion was no longer a threat, Othello ordered a night of feasting and celebration throughout Cyprus. The general was eager to spend time with his new bride. Othello charged Cassio with keeping the watch. As ever, Iago kept watch too. The evil ensign soon found Rodrigo and pulled him aside. Desdemona is in love with Cassio, Iago whispered. After all, it's only natural that she tire of the ugly Moor. So, more racism. Lovely. So he's calling Othello ugly just because he's a Moor from Africa, which is untrue. Obviously, Desdemona finds him attractive if she wants to marry him, right? Cassio is young and handsome and has all the advantages a young Venetian woman desires. Iago convinced the foolish Rodrigo that if they could just get rid of Cassio, Desdemona would be his at last. So Iago is trying to convince Rodrigo that if they get rid of Cassio, then Rodrigo can have Desdemona all to herself, because he's saying, oh, there's no way Desdemona actually likes Othello. She's really in love with Cassio. But really, Iago wants Cassio out of the way so he can be Othello's second in command, right? Because he's just jealous. That evening, Iago put his plan into action. He found Cassio on duty and bullied him into drinking a toast to the general's health, and then another, and another. By the time he returned to his post, Cassio was drunk. Awesome. Okay. Goaded on by Iago, Rodrigo then picked a fight with the befuddled Cassio. The lieutenant rose to the bait. Cassio grew loud, belligerent, and threatening. Okay, so Iago told Rodrigo to pick a fight with Cassio, but Cassio was just giving Othello all these toasts, like raising his glass of whatever alcohol he was drinking, and saying, to Othello, right, cheers to him, and all this, and he did it so many times that he ended up drunk. And remember, Cassio was supposed to be keeping watch on Othello and Desdemona's room, and so Iago told Rodrigo to now pick a fight with the drunk Cassio, and he is, and obviously Cassio is so drunk he doesn't really understand what's happening, and he's really upset. So the governor of Cyprus stepped in to stop the matter. The drunken Cassio wounded him. At Iago's urging, Rodrigo ran through the streets, yelling, "Riot! Riot!" The whole town was thrown into a panic. So he's starting a riot for no reason. Well, he has a reason, but the riot is fake, right? He's just running around lying. He's like the boy who cried wolf. There's no riot. He's trying to create a riot. Othello rushed to the scene. Furious at Cassio for destroying the peace he was charged to protect, the general dismissed him. "Cassio, I love thee, but never more be officer of mine," Othello said. He turned his back on his friend and strode off. So he's saying, Cassio, I told you to make sure that everything was peaceful, and you're here drunk, starting a riot? What's wrong with you? You're fired. Which is too bad, right? It's not Cassio's fault. So Cassio stood lost and alone. He was devastated at being discharged. My reputation, he moaned. I have lost my reputation. Iago sidled up to his rival. He spoke to Cassio as if he were a concerned friend. Ask Desdemona's help to put you again in her husband's good graces, Iago urged. She is so kind that she'll do whatever you ask and more. Cassio sped away to seek out Desdemona. Iago laughed. I'll pour this poison in Othello's ear, that his wife wants Cassio reinstated because she desires him. Then, however much she strives to help Cassio, that much she'll hurt her own reputation with her husband. So what Iago means is that now he's going to spread a rumor that Desdemona is in love with Cassio, right? So now when Othello hears that rumor, and of course at first he's going to say, oh, that's not true, she loves me. But then when Desdemona comes to him and is telling him, oh, you should hire Cassio back, he's really such a great guy, Othello's going to get very suspicious and be very concerned and ask her probably, why do you want Cassio to be reinstated so badly? Why do you care about him, right? And it's going to cause a rift between them. It's going to cause more jealousy and more drama, which is Iago's plan, of course. When he reached the castle, Cassio begged for an audience with Desdemona. As Iago had predicted, the sweet-tempered young woman easily agreed to plead her friend's case. "My husband shall never rest until this matter is resolved," she assured him. "His home shall seem a school, with every lesson about Cassio's loyal service." So she's basically making a metaphor, right? That she's going to try and teach Othello about why he should hire Cassio back again. Meanwhile, Iago intentionally guided Othello in the garden where Desdemona and Cassio spoke. As they approached, Cassio grew nervous. So Desdemona and Cassio are talking together in a garden, and Iago is bringing Othello there to spy on them. So when Cassio is nervous, "I'm not fit to speak to the general right now. I'm too ashamed," he told Desdemona. "I'll take my leave." So he's saying he feels so bad for his actions earlier that he got drunk and he let himself get drunk, I guess, and he wasn't really being a good guard. So he's saying he's fine. He'll just be fired and move on. Iago watched Cassio slink off and scowl disapprovingly. "Ha! I like not that," he muttered. So he's mad that it turned out that way. Othello looked warily at his ensign. "Was that not Cassio parted from my wife?" he asked. "Surely not," Iago said slyly. "Cassio wouldn't steal away, so guilty-like, seeing you coming." So he's trying to make it seem as though Cassio saw Othello coming, and since Cassio was with Othello's wife Desdemona, and he saw Othello, he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna leave because I don't want Othello to see us together." Othello frowned. He had learned to trust Iago's instincts on the battlefield. That certainly was Cassio. Did Iago have reason to suspect him? With Desdemona? Othello eyed his wife uncertainly. But when Desdemona approached, she took his rough hands and brought them to her tender lips. All Othello's doubts melted away. He kissed her. Her lips pressed his for a moment, then she stepped back. "I've just spoken to Cassio, my lord," Desdemona said. "If I have any power to move you, call him back. Reinstate him. He is sorry for what he has done." She heaped praise upon Cassio and pushed Othello to name the exact hour he would see his ex-lieutenant. Desdemona's urgent pleas grated on Othello. "I will deny thee nothing," he told her, "but leave me be for now." Desdemona curtsied slightly and departed. So basically Othello told her, "Yeah, I'll listen to what you say. I understand where you're coming from, but just leave me alone to think about it." So she left. Othello turned to Iago. "When Cassio left my wife, why did you say, 'I like not that'?" Basically saying, "I don't like that." Iago was far too shrewd to directly accuse Cassio and Desdemona. Othello's first instinct would be to defend his wife, perhaps with drawn sword. Instead, Iago said, "It were not for your quiet nor your good to let you know my thoughts." So he's telling Othello, "You don't really want to know what I'm thinking," which is a tricky thing to say. Othello commanded Iago to speak. "Thinkst thou that I would make a life of jealousy? I assure you that I'll see proof before I doubt my wife's faithfulness." So since Othello told Iago he wanted to hear what he has to say, now Iago feels like he'll listen more. "Now I can speak freely," Iago said. He claimed that one night, as he bunked next to Cassio in the officers' lodgings, he overheard the lieutenant talking in his sleep. "I heard Cassio say, 'Sweet Desdemona, let us be wary, let us hide our loves,'" Iago reported. "And then he laid his leg over my thigh and kissed me hard, as if he plucked up kisses by the roots." So he's saying, and this is of course a lie. I don't think Cassio would ever say this because he doesn't really love Desdemona. But, he's telling a story, telling a lie, making it seem as though making it seem as though Cassio loves Desdemona. Had Cassio been reliving a secret meeting with Desdemona? The thought of another man kissing his wife filled Othello with anger. "Monstrous! Monstrous!" he cried. Iago looked concerned. "It's just that I would not have your noble nature abused," he told Othello. "The women of Venice are skilled in deceiving their husbands. much as Desdemona deceived her father in marrying you. Noting the general's changed expression, he added, I see this has a little dashed your spirits. So he's basically saying you can't trust these women, right? They're always lying and cheating. I mean, Desdemona lied to her father to marry you, so why wouldn't she lie to you too? And he's telling Othello now that Othello looks like his spirits have been dashed, so he looks a little down, right? He doesn't look very happy. And then Othello says, not a jot, Othello insisted and sent Iago away. So he's saying, no, I'm fine. But he's lying, right? But in truth, jealousy gnawed at his soul. So Othello's getting jealous of Cassio. Now he could not think of Desdemona without imagining her in Cassio's arms or in his bed. Oh, curse of marriage, he groaned, that we can call these delicate creatures ours, but not their appetites. So he's saying, even though he's married to Desdemona and she's his, right, which is untrue, people do not belong to each other, but because Desdemona is his wife, his to own, he can own her, but he can't own her appetite, meaning that even though she's his wife, he can't stop her from thinking about other men. So he's just getting very jealous. By the time Desdemona and Emilia came to fetch him for dinner, Othello's head was throbbing. His wife offered to bind his forehead with her handkerchief to ease the pain, but he pushed the cloth away and it drifted to the ground unnoticed. So Othello has a headache. Sometimes if you have a headache and you tie something around your head, it helps with the pressure. Like if you have a headache and you press down, or if you tie something, it helps it feel better. So that's why Desdemona offered Othello her handkerchief to tie around it. And he didn't want anything from her, so he said, no. And she dropped it, so it fell to the ground unnoticed, so no one saw. Emilia dropped behind the pair and scooped up the handkerchief. She saw it was the special handkerchief that Othello's mother had given to him, and he had given to his wife. Emilia's husband, Iago, had often pressured her to steal it. Oh no! So Iago's even trying to get his wife to steal things. That's awful. Emilia had refused, so before this, when Iago had told his wife, steal Desdemona's handkerchief, she'd said no. But now, since it was already on the floor and no one noticed it fall, she's tempted. But here she had found the handkerchief on the ground. Why shouldn't she borrow it and have the design copied for her husband? When Iago saw the handkerchief, he snatched it from Emilia, so she did take it. And shooed his wife away. Now he had the proof he needed. Oh, goodness. So Iago's now going to do something else. Alright, so we're going to stop there, you guys. I will see you in our next part of Othello.